This podcast is part of the Big Heads Media Podcast Network. Go to bigheadsmedia.com for more great podcasts.
Hello and welcome to Body Count, a history podcast where we gab about death and disaster through the ages, highlighting figures, single events, time periods, whatever it may be that resulted in someone, or as is usually the case, a lot of someone's dying. I am your host, Jessica Manor, joined as always by my two favorite people in the world. Introduce yourself, ladies.
Hey everyone, Bethany Skelton.
And Kara DiDemizio checking in.
I'm sorry,
I can't like I'm feeling like mellow, okay? So it's the bipolar dynamic again.
Again, like the level of fucking pumped is at a goddamn zero from
I'm
both
pumped,
of you right
but
now.
I'm like mellow pumped.
Guys, do you know how many people are gonna die this episode? Like, get excited.
Get pumped.
A lot of people are
gonna die.
I am not used to being the high energy one. Normally, my dulcet bullshit tones introduce this. So, really quickly, guys, as you know, housekeeping, that's never going away. Wherever it is that you listen to this podcast, please, please, please go give us those 5 stars. Rate and review. Actually, I'm not asking. I'm not saying please. I know enough of you listen to this shit. Go rate and review it.
Please.
No, you listen to it. No, just do it. Just do it. We need you to do it. Don't rate me on Twitter. Don't rate me in my DMs. Don't rate me in my email. Don't tell me how much you love it. Go and give us those 5 stars. We really, really appreciate it. It helps us out on the business end. That being said, we have a guest I am very excited about tonight because what he's going to, he's literally going to take us through the shit, both literally and figuratively. And I'm very, very excited for it. It's such a unique approach that we're going to take tonight. But can you go ahead and introduce yourself, what it is you do, plug all of your stuff, and then we'll get into this, yeah?
Absolutely. Thank you very much for the introduction, Jessica. My name's Kenny Ryan. I'm the host of Abridged Presidential Histories. That's a podcast where I look at the successes, setbacks, scandals of every president in order, and each one in like 60 minutes or less. And really excited to be talking today about a fun story about presidents and something called night soil, which I can't wait to explain what that is.
I actually decided to look this up because I was curious beforehand, and let's just say I have a feeling I will be grossed out.
Yes.
Very gross.
Yeah.
This is the story that when I was researching it, my girlfriend, whose dad worked in sanitation, he was really excited to hear about this story.
He was hyped. He was like, yes.
I'm so pumped for him to listen to this. One, like, I'm not going to lie. I'm going, in my head, I was going, all right. So we're going to talk about one, Kenny, you're so much more concise than we usually are on this show. Obviously, you can wrap it up in 60 minutes or less. So well fucking done to start off. But also, I'm going, like, the last thing I want to talk about is presidents. And then, guys, saw Kenny's outline and I died. I've been so excited to do this one, not only because it's an interesting approach to how we view body counts. It's an interesting approach to how we view presidential history because it's very, very important, turns out, especially for some key figures. So I am absolutely thrilled that we are finally doing this. I have been pumped for, a month and a half or whatever it was when you sent us this.
We've been chatting about this one for a bit.
Yeah, my emails,
Mm-hmm.
have never been so excited. So let's get to it.
Sure. So let me go ahead and set kind of the groundwork here. In 1840, the United States elected 69-year-old war hero William Henry Harrison for president. And what comes next is a story that might sound a little familiar to you. on a cold and miserable day, he delivered the longest inaugural address in national history. And then 30 days later, he got sick and died. And everyone for the longest time thought it was pneumonia that killed him. But that doesn't appear to be the whole story. In the past decade or two, historians have started to revisit his death and what caused it. And they no longer think it was bad weather, a long speech, or about a pneumonia. They think it was bad sanitation in Washington, D.C., and they think it might have had other victims. So this is going to be a story about how poor sanitation might have killed 1 to 3 presidents in the span of a decade and put the country on a path to civil war. So,
holy crap. I mean,
Boom! That's how you tell
That's your
a
thesis
story.
statement. That's your thesis statement. Like,
He's got the main idea in his hand, the who, what, when, where, why, if you will. Like, damn, killing it. That is an introduction for guests in the future. Yes.
I'm glad y'all enjoyed it. So where do we start the story? You know, we know we're going to have at least one dead president. Let's go a little further back. Let's talk about Washington, D.C. and the sanitation system that was so dangerously unsanitary. You know, something that you're probably not used to really thinking of when you think of history. Nobody really thinks that, you know, the history is sanitation, but it's kind of a big deal.
It's not really something that they taught in history class at all that I can think. Not even close. I had to look up what night soil is. I was like, what the hell is
And you were delighted, right?
She was. Look at how thrilled she is. You know, and historical dramas never really highlight wading through rivers of shit in the streets, which, as we're going to find out, is in fact the case. So, can you take it away?
So, let's go to Washington, D.C., where this all takes place. Washington, D.C., it was built in a swamp, a literal swamp. As anybody who has seen Hamilton knows, the site for Washington, D.C., it was not picked because anybody was walking by and said, that looks like a beautiful place for a city. Let's build a city there.
Hell no.
That's not where it came from.
Mosquito territory.
Mosquitoes, snakes, just gross area.
As a person currently living in this fucking Virginia swamp, I can tell you, 'tis not pleasant, folks. So yeah, I understand the pain.
So it gets picked as this compromise where, you know, Alexander Hamilton, he wants a financial system. Thomas Jefferson, he wants a capital closer to the South. It was in New York originally, and they just like kind of point on a map and say, let's put it here near Virginia. Cool. The government doesn't even move there around 1800. That's when people start showing up. John Adams, it's his last month as president. Everybody moves down, and there's not much there yet. This was the diplomatic post that nobody in Europe wants. You know, think about it. You're a European diplomat. You're used to like Paris. You're used to London, Berlin. Really nice stuff. If you're sent to Washington, D.C., what you find is a executive mansion, a half-complete Capitol building, some boarding houses, snakes, mud, roads, and really poor sanitation. It's disgusting. It's like being sent to a third world country because that's what it was at that point.
At which point I would rather just like, if you hate me that much, please try me for treason. I think it would be preferable.
Absolutely.
For some reason, all that's picturing in my head is like that show. What was it? Duck Hunt, or not Duck Hunt?
But Duck Dynasty.
Duck Dynasty.
That's all I can imagine rolling up, going, "Hey guys."
Can you imagine too? To give you context, the Capitol had not just been in like one location; it had been at different spots. And can you imagine for these diplomats to have been used to like New York City or Philadelphia even, and go from at least these relatively reputable, brick streets, kind of a classy, more what they would have expected for a capital city, booming, prosperous, you have industry, and then for all of that to go to, well, this swamp, basically, ironically, Which not to be confused with hashtag drain the swamp, although ironically that is a
Sweet
thing.
Jesus.
That is pretty
Ironically,
This is the
go
origin of that
from
hashtag.
these. Yeah, exactly. That's exactly right. To go from like these very, I don't know, British-esque, if not necessarily as Neapolitan as like to use that Tombstone-esque, very cosmopolitan sort of thing, like not as lovely, but then to be told like, oh, but we're gonna send you to this shithole. Have fun.
Yeah.
Like, welcome
I feel like,
ambassadors.
yeah, I feel like it was a punishment for a long time. I feel like this was the punishment, you know?
That's why I'm saying, just fucking please execute me. I'm done. No, I'm not going to do that.
So we realized that this place was a shithole. So we worked to make it nicer.
We had awareness.
We had awareness. We had a master plan, you know? We're like, we're going to make this capital great. We got a long game for the city. One of the things we, of course, got to do, figure out the sanitation here, you know? Today, we live with indoor plumbing, which is pretty great. You do your business, you flush, you don't think about it anymore. Back then, they didn't have that. So, you kind of had a couple options. And this was a big part of urban planning. You could either use your chamber pot and then just you threw it out the window at night into the street. Or maybe, I don't know if this is fancier or less fancier, you might have a hole dug under your house, which is like an indoor latrine, and you just clean that out like 2 or 3 times a year. Which, just imagine having that.
My face went from like
2 or 3 times a year.
To give you context, my grandma actually used an outhouse, like because
Wow.
So
in
did
rural
mine.
Indiana, I mean, there are parts of the United States where there's not, urban centers that still did rely on that kind of thing, because you have to think it's relatively recent that modern amenities are a thing, both in electricity, plumbing, etc. So when she told me that, I suddenly understood why she hated going to her grandparents' house. Like, I suddenly
can't imagine.
Yeah.
No, I understand that completely with grandparents that grew up in, like Texas, parts of Oklahoma that until the other side of Depression were still using outhouses, which is just baffles the mind. But also, for all you Midwestern states that don't believe in teaching evolution, we're not that far removed. We're not that far removed from the monkeys, because if you'll take a look, we were literally still flinging shit out of our windows at that point
out
in
the
time.
window. And so here's
Oh, I was gonna say, don't look at this Midwestern. My mama taught me evolution, but I was.
You're not flinging shit?
No, actually,
you're not flinging shit out of windows like a zoo monkey. That's exciting.
I thought about that, and honestly, how great of a oops revenge would it be? Like, somebody walking by at the right time, you just so happen to throw your bucket of shit out the window. Like, genius. Like, it's the oops is probably where this got started from. Oops, sorry.
Yeah, there's going to be some characters in the story that are going to come up who I feel like were probably the recipient of that more than once. Maybe at the end we'll decide, who do we think got dumped on the most, and maybe that was really the cause. Maybe that was
who got the most shit flung on them. Agree.
So everybody's throwing their shit out the windows, and you throw it into the street, and it's just there. If you're nice, you do it at night. And what then happens, the next step of old sanitation, is some people would come by in their wagons, and they would scoop the shit off the street, which they called night soil because they scooped it at night. They would throw it in the wagon, and then they would take the wagon to a lot in town and just dump it there. And in the case of Washington, D.C., this lot was about 10 blocks uphill of the White House. So,
physics, yay, gravity, awesome.
And I'm sorry I derailed you a little bit on the dumping it 2 to 3 months in the house, they would
Yes.
also scoop it from where?
Yeah.
Oh, this is
You
like
know,
a
you got
fucking.
long poles and buckets. You throw it in your wagon. There were some other alternatives, by the way, in some histories. Like you mentioned New York City. Let's talk about New York City. Let's talk about how advanced New York
Let's
City
do
was.
that.
Over there, they put it in the wagon. And if you got a reputable night soil guy, I only assume like every family had a night soil guy. You know, like today you have your electrician, your plumber, your night soil guy. You know, if you got a reputable night soil guy, they take it out of town, they sell it to some farmers and use it as, you know, yeah, you grow crops in it. Circle of life. Circle of life. But if you have some lazy night soil guys, and New York had quite a few of them, they would just toss it in the Hudson River. So in New York City, they would actually have an issue where every now and then they had to dredge the river because ships docking in harbor would get stuck in just the human shit that was all along the waterfront.
I understand why the British would have wanted to give us up after all. Even after the revolution. Oh no.
A colony so high maintenance that the British fucking gave up. Like, think about that. Yes, because we were throwing shit in our river. How high maintenance is that? You can't teach us anything. We're animals.
We weren't all throwing our shit in the river. There was always that one guy that just, Frank, man, he was always late picking up the shit. He always took too many lunch breaks, and he was skimming shit on the side down the river. Like we all know one of those guys somewhere. Of course,
A shit skimmer?
a shit skimmer.
I guess you're saying shit skimmer Frank couldn't quite make it to the shit dump side, and he's like, fuck it, the river's here, you know?
Yeah. You know,
What can go wrong?
I want to take the afternoon off, you know. I'll just throw it over here. Okay, so that's the first issue with Washington, D.C. is that everybody's throwing their shit out the window, and then it's all being dumped in this lot uphill of the White House. The second issue with Washington, D.C. sanitation is originally everybody got their water from the river. They just go down, get it in buckets, take it to wherever they need it. But, you know, by 1829, people were getting kind of tired of doing that. And so in the White House, they decided to use pipes and gravity instead to pipe water in from a spring that was 4 blocks uphill from the White House. So, you know, you just hook a pipe to the spring, the water goes down the pipes, you got wet, no problem. The spring, though, was 6 blocks downhill from the night soil. So you have all the night soil, and it's just sitting there, and who knows what's happening underground as it's moving around. And then a little bit closer than that, you have a spring with your drinking water, and that's what everyone in the White House is drinking. So this system opens in about 1833.
My God.
Yeah.
Shit. Water.
So here's a question. Would you rather have the typhoid fever, or would you rather have, you know, the amoebas from the river? Like, which one?
I mean, why not both? And why
not?
Why
you know
not?
what? We can have both. You're right.
Yeah.
We don't
Yeah,
have to. We're Americans.
Wow.
It's our right not to
We don't
choose.
Settle.
We don't discriminate here. We don't discriminate, okay?
And if you think those river amoebas are too far away, don't worry, because they dug a canal from the river to right by the White House. So there you got
Excellent.
that fetid water by the White House. And this, by the way, too, this DC canal doesn't exist anymore because people just kept throwing carcasses in it or more crap in it. Drunks would fall in it, which, you know, probably wasn't good. So you also had that, like, a block from the White House.
I tell you, Kenny, this is not America. If I can't live in a drunken Ganges-esque fever or like beaver parasites in my gut, I just don't feel fulfilled, if you will, without those two things. Plus, you know, the shit water. So I'm very excited that that we chose our capital and we built it this way. It's the most American freaking thing I've ever heard. So
we just said, you know, we're gonna do it. It was like Field of Dreams, but with
if you build it.
Yeah. If you build it, they'll come, and it won't end well. You know, like nothing beyond that tagline.
Fast forward to 2020, where people are shitting in the halls of the Capitol building. It's fucking full circle. That's just all we've done.
2021, technically.
Well,
Yeah.
you're right. 2021, self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yeah,
You know,
we need
just
to find if there's any night soil guys still operating. Maybe there's like that
if
one
you,
guy who's like, "This is coming back. I've still
There's
got my wagon. I've still got my
he's
shovel."
like wearing a jumpsuit
Yeah,
and some kind of Urban Outfitters men hipster style, ready to shovel away.
yeah,
Yeah.
with a patch.
You've had somebody in bear skins. Now you're going to have the guy in a hipster revival jumpsuit
yeah.
scooping the night soil. It's full circle. If you build it, shit will come. So
Yes.
exciting.
So the other thing that will come, and this is the last thing on DC sanitation, is typhoid will come. You mentioned this earlier. So let's talk about typhoid real quick, because this is the last bit of the sanitation story. This kind of open sewage system near water supplies, the night soil yard, the lot. It's great breeding ground for typhoid fever. This is a communicable disease with symptoms of intestinal inflammation, fever, headache, abdominal pain, weakness,
Both.
constipation, or diarrhea. So that's the big villain lurking in DC that's going to strike several times in this episode. So keep an eye out for him.
Shit, I think
Because
I got typhoid fever all the time then.
let me reiterate this. Like, I think people are thinking, oh, I ate something kind of bad. You will literally shit yourself to death. This is a really serious, I feel like people approach it. This is a really serious disease. And furthermore, you're in a time when you can't just go to the hospital and have something readily available.
Oh,
This
we're gonna
is
talk about some of the treatments.
serious.
The treatments people had for this stuff were terrifying back then, and not really treatments. But yeah, you should take this seriously, because if you've ever played Oregon Trail, you know how many members of your party get killed.
That's true.
I mean, and
I always got captured and died of, I think, dehydration. Every time I played, I either got
Not
captured
dysentery?
not dysentery.
Dysentery was the one that always got me. That's why y'all see me. I'm
me
drinking
too.
a lot of water on this program right now. I'm not gonna die of dehydration. All right, so all that, we got the groundwork laid. We know that DC is a cesspool, breeding ground of this disease. So let's jump back to William Henry Harrison. Let's talk a bit about this guy and who he was, what's going on here. William Henry Harrison, he's someone who was born February 9th, 1774 in Virginia. At a young age, he joined the army.
Can I volunteer really quickly
Yeah.
that it's a little bit fitting after having spent some time in Virginia that he would die in a proverbial shithole, if you will. I think it's probably fitting, having been born in Virginia. So go on. We have no listeners in Virginia, or only very few. So
That's fair.
sorry.
No worries, no worries.
Fair.
So I was trying to come up with a joke, and I was like, all these jokes are too mean to people in Virginia, so I'm just gonna stop right there.
No, go for it. Go for it.
So William Henry Harrison, he joins the army, moves out west, and this is a point midway. It's like 1793. There's nobody out there. This is the point where there's no roads, just kind of Indian trails and game trails, and he's helping make it safe as settlers kind of slowly trickle out. In 1799, he gets elected to Congress to represent this territory. And while he's in D.C., he befriends President John Adams. This turns out to be a good move. John Adams makes him governor of the Indiana Territory. And so he's now in charge of this whole vast territory. It's like him and two judges. There's hardly anybody
And
here.
Indiana as we think of it, I might want to add. It was not the size that
No.
Indiana would amount to be.
It's basically like the modern Midwest. Modern Indiana is just a small part of this territory. And his goal, OG, absolutely. And his job as governor is to get land from the Indians, help people move out there. By all accounts, he's not someone who really treats the Native Americans poorly. There's other people who will show up and they're like, here's our plan. We're going to get them drunk and take their land. And he's like, no, you can't get them drunk first. You can't do that part. So he tries to be a little more honest about it. And he's out there at the outbreak of the War of 1812. So he's out there at War of 1812. The thing that really makes him famous, and this is going to play a big role later, is he fights the Native American chief Tecumseh at the Battle of Tippecanoe. You know, it's a big victory. It's one of the few. It happens right before the War of 1812. It's one of these few things that goes right in that war. Later in the war, he again leads the war effort, and he actually defeats the British and Tecumseh again up in Canada, and he basically saves kind of the Western theater of the war. At the end of that war, this is a war where most things go wrong. That's one where the White House gets burned down, you know, and they're like, damn it, we still trying to dig a canal. Now we got to rebuild the Capitol. This is rough. He's one of the few
You assholes. Exactly. Like that's what a
But
war.
the thing is, after the war, he kind of disappears from history for a bit, because the other hero of that war, Andrew Jackson, he becomes president in 1828. And Andrew Jackson is like, this country isn't big enough for two war heroes, so I'm kicking you out of the government.
In a way, Harrison has his Churchillian interwar years, but yet not so much when he comes back. Really rained on his parade, Barbara Streisand-esque style, like the opposite of that.
Yeah, he has a pretty rough time out of government. He tries his hand a few businesses, fails. He's literally like, by when 1836 rolls around, he's just a clerk working in a courthouse. And he's this guy that everybody's like, whatever happened to him, man? Like, that's too bad.
It's like that. Like those articles, the clickbait, like the stars. Where are they now?
yes, exactly. That's what he was. He was. Where's the child star now? Nobody knows.
No.
But the Whig Party, one of the two political parties at the time, they find him and they decide that they want to run him for president, and they do. And in 1836, he doesn't win. They do this weird strategy where they have like 4 different candidates from like every region of the country. But he performs best of those. So then in 1840, they run, and he actually wins the nomination, which is a big surprise. And real quick, this is important. His vice president choice. For vice president, the party picks a guy named John Tyler. And the reason they land on John Tyler is basically because nobody else wanted the job. Everybody knows vice president is a stupid job. For him to win, he offended some other established members of the party, and none of them wanted to be like second best. None of them wanted to be second fiddle. So there's literally like a quote from someone back there, like, John Tyler took the job because the job went to Begin and nobody wanted it. So it's that's like, how.
I was just gonna say, it's like nobody wants to dress up as Robin. Like everybody wants to be Batman.
Yes.
Nobody wants to be Robin.
He's like the Mike Pence, man. Like playing second fiddle to a larger than life personality.
I was gonna compare it. Yeah, the job no one wants. I was gonna mention the Veep reference in like season 7 when Selena's talking about there's no safer place in all of Washington to put Jonah. Like, and how she describes being the VP. If you're not a fan of Inanucci or Veep, like, go check it out. You'll know what I'm talking about by the time you get there.
But having seen season 1, I'm like, wait, Jonah? What? Okay, now I got to see how the heck that happens.
Oh my gosh, you have to finish it.
So they named John Tyler as vice president, and everyone at the time says, okay, great. This isn't going to be important. Fully confident. That's not going to matter.
Right.
Harrison gets sworn in. He gives that hour, 45-minute inaugural address on a cold day, and then he gets sick and dies 31 days later. And for a long time, people assumed it's pneumonia. Let's like drill in on this and look at why it's not pneumonia. What happened? So on March 4th, he gives his speech. Nailed it. Killed it. Yeah. I'm sure he felt really good about it. Crushed it. You know? Yeah, you don't give a speech that's 105 minutes long unless at the end you're like, high five, bam, I nailed that. You know?
Everybody's in tears. Everybody's going to recite this. Everybody's going to remember these word for word.
Yes.
Back. I did a good
Pat
job.
on the back.
You know, FDR took a couple of minutes to declare war on Japan, Germany, and all her allies. So what a speech this must have been. All I'm saying, like,
It ended
Fucking-
around then. It ended around then historically.
Yeah, it was they wrapped it up around 1942. So
Like
it was,
there should be a ghost story about William Henry Harrison where people like if you listen closely, he's still going. You can hear him on the wind at night. He's still going.
why have you not written this historical fan fiction, sir? I hear there's quite the market.
I know. Well, this will be put on the to-do list. So March 4th delivers this great speech, and then for the next like 3 weeks he's fine. And on March 26th, 22 days later, he shows his first symptoms. He's got a bit of indigestion. He's feeling weak. The doctor comes by and he's like, "Okay, that doesn't look good. I'm sure it'll be fine though." Next day, he's feeling worse. He's now constipated. He's got a severe chill. And remember, it's like, what are the things we're looking for typhoid? Typhoid was fever, headache, abdominal pain, weakness, constipation, diarrhea. That's the typhoid stuff. And this is what that sounds like. Day later, the 28th now, he's got severe pain in his brow, his side, constipation, nausea. A few days later, he's now starting to cough up bloody mucus. It's still constipated, feverish, turns to diarrhea. On April 5th, he dies at midnight.
Damn.
And he actually, the treatment that he's given, by the way, is like kind of horrifying. Here's the way doctors are trying to treat him. They're giving him like enemas. That's like one of their ideas. They're also doing something called blistering him with hot cups, where you just get like a really piping hot cup and you put it on the skin till it forms a blister, and somehow that's
I'm
supposed to make
intrigued.
it better.
Okay,
Yeah.
so they still do cupping like as an athlete kind of thing, but I'm
What?
assuming that's not the thing. It's called cupping.
Yeah, that's a thing.
Really?
Yeah.
This sounds horrifying.
Okay. Well, no, this is going to sound really lame, but think of The Godfather
Yeah.
Part 2,
Yeah.
where they're treating baby Fredo for his pneumonia. They're doing cupping. Like, this continued well on into like 50s, 60s, and apparently, as Bethany's going to tell us now, is some kind of
Cupping is actually
holistic horse shit.
cupping is still used. Actually, I was a head chair dance coach at an athletic program at a college, and for athletes, especially like our track and field, our cross country, runners that had sore muscles or anything, they would do cupping, and they would be left with these just circles just everywhere. And all it's really doing is targeting specific areas to help circulation and eliminate pain. So they still do it.
All right. So they were
but-
ahead of their time on that one. We'll chalk. Yeah, that's great. They also gave him a lot of
Really quick, can I just go ahead and interject? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
And I know they gave him a lot of mercury, and I know that that's going to be a factor,
I was gonna
as
say
we
cocaine.
will see. No, I'm sure laudanum was introduced, but opiates aside,
Okay.
the mercury is going to factor into it. But also, I want to say, as a person who I'm a little bit embarrassed and never looked into this or never thought of anything other than the pneumonia thing. It's just like a common, I feel like for once in my life, the Wikipedia reader here.
Yeah.
When you presented this to me, I don't love that position. I don't love that I'm in it, but also this was new. Yeah, this was new and and for it, I do feel when I was reading this outline, I was like, oh, the shame. Like, I was fucking like into it, Lion King style. Yeah. Oh my God, Kara, your and I brain went to the same place.
We were both
But
in the same place.
I was oh, the shame, Lion King style, and I looked into it and I was like, God damn it. And then the thing we're gonna find also with the mercury stuff, I'm ashamed of myself as an
Jessica,
historian.
How many beers are you into right now? Because I'm almost buzzing off your buzz. I swear to God.
Trace. We're rolling deep.
See,
Yeah.
Your talk's already like getting a little slower. I hear you saying the same thing. Oh man, I'm looking forward to seeing how shit-faced Jessica gets, y'all. while talking about dead presidents.
Well, now I'm not going to, just to be contrarian.
Just
if
don't
you
fall
shut
into
up, I'm
Sea
gonna
Canal.
die.
Ugh.
Sludge. just backstroking
None,
the
With
none of
the
us are there
grass.
to go in after you. We're not there to fish you out.
right?
Now I'm going to be contrarian and not drink anymore. So,
That'll last 5 minutes. I swear to Jesus.
come at me.
Okay.
Okay, so
All right.
that's the death of William Henry Harrison. Historians now look back and they think the primary diagnosis was typhoid with a secondary infection in the lungs and pulmonary system. You know, that coughing up of bloody mucus. So
Yeah.
it might have been like a secondary kind of pneumonia, but definitely is a typhoid that killed him. And here's where we start to get to. I promised you that somehow these deaths were going to help cause the Civil War. And that's where we're at right now. The first domino to the Civil War is when Harrison dies, and this nobody that they plucked to be vice president, John Tyler, he's told, you are now, the president's dead. Come on down to Washington, D.C. They actually don't even tell him that. They just tell him the president's dead. And then he's like, well, that means I'm president. And he like tears off his shirt like Superman and he runs down and he just looks like I'm president now. Because nobody really like knew what was supposed to happen. It doesn't
And
really
as we
say.
know,
Yeah.
there's not a presidential precedent.
Set a historical precedent. Totally. Like this is the first time this has happened. And he just shows up and he's like, no, like I'm the president. And people are like, you're the acting president. He's like, say that in my face and I'm gonna pop you. And he just takes over.
Kid that gets the participation trophy. Mom, I did it. I'm a winner.
I'm a winner.
I achieved all my goals.
So the unfortunate thing is nobody else agreed he was a winner. In the next 4 years, everybody comes to hate him. The long and short of this is that he's going to get burned in effigy by his own party and then kicked out of it. So he becomes a man without a party.
Can I just add, this guy still has a living grandson, and yes, one living grandson.
Yes. Yeah, he's still got a living grandson. Absolutely. That's a fun factoid. One, he had two, and one of them died last year.
Which I was a little sad about, just because of like, I know that they were like literally in their 80s or 90s, but I was like, God damn it. You ruined the trivia fact when you died, man. Like, you fucking ruined the trivia. And I think it was the one that actually managed the estate. Like, one of them actually was giving tours, like, as of like 2019. Yeah.
That's wild. So
yeah, you should show up and see which one died, I suppose. If it's the one that knows the history, it might be interesting.
That would be fun.
Being the grandson of one of the least liked presidents.
I know. Do you think he like kind of has that on the down low, you know, or is that something that he talks up with people?
I put that on my tombstone.
Grandson.
Maybe
I mean, it's wild too because like it's not just the grandson of a president from a long time ago. He's the grandson of a guy who was born in like
the
18th century.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's what's wild about it. Like,
that's what's wild. That's what's crazy. So Tyler, he's kicked out of his party, but he wants to be reelected. And he's like, okay, so I'm right now, I am tracking to win 0 states. You know, the Democrats don't want to renominate me. The Whigs don't want to renominate me. The only way I have a chance is if I do something crazy.
Of course.
He decides.
Where do we see this happen before?
Right?
See, I was like, what's a man got to do to get some attention around here? Like,
exactly. What do I got to do?
There's no
Twitter in this time period.
He's gonna do like the presidential version of like flipping the game board and like let's see where everything falls. Because what he decides he's gonna do is he's gonna annex Texas. And the reason annexing Texas is crazy is Jessica's from there. So like what the hell?
So like
I know. That was fun, wasn't that?
Well done, sir.
Thank you.
Resuscitated. Like she looked like she was like in a grave about to be reborn with the mention of Texas.
Well, I'm not talking anymore because you've both accused me of alcoholism.
Accused. That's an acute diagnosis, ma'am.
Well, duh. But now I'm trying to behave myself. I mean,
Nah,
like,
but what's funny, Kenny, is they had to actually do legitimate what was it, Bethany? You're telling me to go to school or to go to college in Texas, you have to learn about the Republic of Texas.
Oh,
Actually-
I grew up in Texas too, so
Oh, that's right, yeah.
I wasn't born
he
there.
grew up in
That
Austin.
blows my
Yeah,
mind.
you take Texas history like 3 different times, and they never tell you the crazy stuff. Kind of like with American
How is that
history too.
possible?
Yeah.
And not only that, but whatever, if you decide to transfer out of a Texas school,
Mhm.
history, Texas credits do not transfer. So, yeah.
I don't see why every other state isn't learning about Texas history. Jessica, what's up with that?
Wow.
We don't learn about Indiana history
Well-
in Indiana.
Well, nobody
We
wants
don't
to.
love it. We don't love it.
God damn
It's sort of the same thing as when Texas decides to secede from the Union, or at very least threaten it. We suppose that everybody's had Texas history and remembers that we were once a quote unquote nation. But I mean, live and let
Let's be fair,
live.
though, everybody in the country knows the same thing about Texas history that Texans do, and there was an Alamo, and we remember that. That's yeah.
I can
With some help from Tennessee.
Yeah,
Pretty
some
much.
Tennessee volunteers.
Davy Crockett.
Sure.
No.
Davy Crockett. Yeah, absolutely.
I can firmly say that there is one thing I did learn from my time of Texas history, is that Texans loved amendments. There was just amendment after amendment after amendment after amendment. And honestly, having to take quizzes and tests over the different ones was not my forte. That is one thing I know. Not just the Alamo, but you guys love amendments.
See, I don't even remember that part. All I remember is the Alamo. That's the only part that was on my quiz.
Lucky you.
So one of the things in Texas history they don't tell you is the reason that the United States didn't want Texas, because for Texas had been available since 1836. That's when the Alamo happens. That's when Texas won its independence. It wins its independence in 1836, and it pretty much immediately says, "Hey, the United States, we would like to join." And the United States says no. Even Andrew Jackson, who's president at the time, crazy ass Andrew Jackson, says no, because the thing that everyone in the United States realizes is that Texas it's going to be a slave state if we annex it. That was actually part of one of the reasons why Texas went into revolt, is that the Mexican government tried to outlaw slavery, and that was among their grievances of that's it, we're out of here.
That blows my mind.
Right. that was one of those things I didn't learn growing up. And,
of course.
Right.
An inconvenient truth, if you will.
There's a few of those. And
there's a lot.
I didn't know that. I really didn't know that. That's definitely a tidbit of information that kind of makes sense.
Jessica has a comment she would like to make. I see it in her eyes.
I do not. I don't have anything to say. I have nothing to say.
No, but it really does blow my mind, because I really never put 2 and 2 together that of this whole, it ties into the slavery aspect of it. I never really, it's something they didn't just flat out say in Texas history.
Yeah, no. Well, so here's the funny thing.
You're from Kansas.
No,
they never mention the slavery aspect to annexation.
Right. Remember, I know, it's not the first thing that comes, it's not something that's just in my forefront of my brain that I think.
One of the reasons I wonder if this is why people don't talk about it too much is because the Texans, they thought they had a clever way of getting around this abolishment of slavery, and they just started calling all their slaves servants. They were still slaves.
They're pawns.
They were still totally mistreated, horribly abused. It was still, but they were just if the Mexican official came by, they'd be like, "Oh no, that's just my servant," and the servant might be like, "Oh, can I go?" And they'd be like, "No."
It's very tea and crumpets with my servants, not my slaves.
Actually, it's wonderfully whitewashed in a lot of textbooks in Texas as if they were serving indentured servants.
Yes.
They were not.
Yeah.
There was no indentured servitude
Nope.
here.
Nope.
Especially
Totally
not
right.
in East Texas, where it's a very much a plantation, less so as you get into what's quote unquote Texas. But in East Texas, it was a plantation form of existence.
Yeah.
Very
It
much,
could
very
resemble
agrarian.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's a reason they joined the Confederacy, and I think a lot of it is that primarily it's the first part of Texas that's lived in, that's really like,
That's where most of Texas
the
is.
money maker.
Like if you think of Texas now, and you like Dallas, Austin, San Antonio, I-35, everything west of that was still like Comanche territory.
It's going to be a long time before you try to fuck with the Quahati Comanche. Let me put it that way. Sherman has to go up there and get fucking real before West Texas and the Panhandle are even can be settled. So yeah, that's a really good point.
Okay, so John Tyler, he's president. He's like, I want to annex Texas, and it hasn't happened yet. Because everybody knows that if you annex Texas, that the North is going to super hate it, because that means more slave states. That increases the power of the slave states, throws off balance of power. And the South super loves it for the exact same reason. So that's why nobody had done it, because it's going to piss all the political parties at this point. Neither of them really had a position on slavery. The political parties were almost kind of created so we have a way of avoiding talking about it. Like if you have two national parties and both parties agree we're just not going to talk about slavery, then you can avoid controversies over it. You can avoid, any big fights, all that. There's just like, we're not going to talk about it. But if you annex Texas, you have to talk about it. And that's why no one had done it. But John Tyler, he's like, okay, well, what do I got to do? I am currently tracking to win 0 states. So maybe if I annex Texas, I will win all the states in the South, because they're all going to be grateful that I annexed Texas. And if I get the whole South, the other two parties, the Whigs and the Democrats, they will split the vote in the North. The Whigs might get half the northern states. The Democrats might get the other half. And then what's the result of the election? I don't need a majority of everything. I will have most. I will have the whole South. Somebody will have the Northeast. Somebody will have half the North. Someone will have half the North. I will win re-election. That's my path to victory. Yeah. Now, the plan doesn't work for Tyler. He doesn't win re-election because he doesn't annex Texas quickly enough. The word gets out of what he's doing. The North flips out. They block him. It becomes a big part of the election thing. He's convinced not to run. He ends up leaving office. But he does, like his last days in office, he kind of pulls a fast one on Congress. And they pass a law saying the president will get to decide if we want to annex it, knowing that we're about to have this new president, a guy named Polk, in the White House. And Congress all thinks Polk, he'll choose to negotiate with Mexico. Like he'll figure things out. Oh yeah, that was another thing. If we annex Texas, there's also probably going to be a war with Mexico, because while Texas was independent, Mexico was kind of like, no, not really. We're still claiming you're part of us. Nobody can take Texas. If anybody takes Texas, we'll go to war. So,
I guess
Tyler,
a tug of war effect.
It is kind of. Yeah. Mexico, there's decades later, there will be a Mexican president who gives one of my favorite quotes in history. And the quote is this: "Poor Mexico, so far from God, so close to the United States." Everybody in Mexico is like, we don't want the United States on our border. We'd rather have an independent Texas. Like, we just don't want Texas to become part of the United States. We don't want that. Yeah.
Would like anything to separate us as far as possible from the United States.
Right.
We annexing Texas, then so be it.
and we're gonna find out pretty soon why they felt that way. So Tyler, he does sneak through his last days in office. He manages to annex Texas. So the deal is done. The poison pill is swallowed. And now, and this only happened because William Henry Harrison died. Like if William Henry Harrison had been president, he never would have annexed Texas. He would have been a good Whig. He would have won. He wouldn't have needed to do this crazy thing. But because he died, That makes John Tyler president. John Tyler's crazy. He pisses off everybody, and so he decides he has to annex Texas.
Oh
And yeah. And so as he leaves office, as John Tyler leaves office in 1844, a new guy enters the White House, a guy named James K. Polk. Polk is going to be the new president. He's the winner of the 1844 presidential election.
Hey, Bethany, why don't you look him up and see if he's hot or not?
Ooh, I love doing
We're
president.
gonna bring back some president.
Polk has a very unique look. I'm going to be curious what y'all's verdict is here.
I love a good old president or any historical hot or
I
not.
like some portraiture, but not all portraiture is flattering.
Right.
I'm pulling it up too.
Oh, you're right. He does have like an old, interesting look. Like the hairline he almost looks like Frankenfurter a little.
Oh, I'm a solid 7. I actually
Are you
like.
kidding me? I'd give him a 3.
I like the Draco Malfoy slick back hairdo that he's got going on. I'm here for it.
I'm looking at like old Polk.
Yeah, look
But
at young Polk.
Polk. I'm sorry, I'm hashtag daddy all the way. So
Hashtag no. Okay, what about okay, young Polk is better. I will give you that. Young Polk actually has a little bit of swagger. But old Polk, my God, did not age gracefully. Damn.
Well,
Let's see.
You know that if whenever he met a woman, he probably walked up and he was like, "You want to get poked?" Actually,
the polka?
in the 1850s, the Democrats, who's the same party, he's a Democrat, they're going to run a guy named Pierce. And one of their campaign slogans for Pierce was, "We poked you in 44 and we're going to pierce you in 52.
I love that. My God.
Are you serious?
I am serious. Yeah.
That's right.
I mean, of course you won. Who's going to vote against that?
Hell no.
Who doesn't want to get poked and then pierced?
I know. And then a few years later, they land James Penetrate for office, but he didn't win for some reason. So.
Can I just say Franklin Pierce?
Yeah.
That's historical daddy territory. William Henry Harrison was a hard pass, which is unfortunate because he has Indiana ties. But Benjamin Harrison, his little grandson, or was it? Yeah, his grandson.
Yeah,
was
grandson.
Was
Only
not too bad.
Granddad grandson combo, the only one in history as presidents. So Polk comes into office, and he's an expansionist. He is the manifest destiny president. This thing that we all learned as kids, the United States is supposed to expand. He pretty much does like all the expanding. He ran on a pledge to get the Oregon Territory from Britain, which was kind of jointly occupied, and to get Texas and as much else as he could from Mexico. And he was going to do it. Damn it. And what he does on the Mexico front is he uses the annexation of Texas as an opportunity to manufacture a war with Mexico. And so here's how this comes about, is both Texas and Mexico claimed that South Texas belonged to them. It was disputed territory. Today, if you look at a map, the border is the Rio Grande. And that's what Texas said it was back then. But Mexico said, no, the border is the Nueces River, which is about like 100 miles north. So you got about 100 miles of land between these two rivers that both nations say belongs to them. And instead of, being cautious, instead of like playing it safe around this, let's let, people figure it out. Polk marches an army right into it and sends them down to the Rio Grande River, which is basically like to the Mexicans, this looks like you just invaded 100 miles deep into our territory. And this provoked a Mexican response and triggered the Mexican-American War, which would last the next 2 years. Yeah. And the Americans, they were going to kick butt in this war, actually. A general who's going to be coming back, Zachary Taylor, old rough and ready. What a fun name. He's going to win a ton of victories in kind of South Texas, North Mexico. He's going to kick Santa Anna's butt. That's the Mexican president.
Oh, Santa Anna's a riot, man.
Santa Anna's nuts. Santa Anna is the guy who lost to the Texans in 36. Santa Anna is president 12 different times of Mexico. Like president, not president.
Is he a little Napoleon in him?
Yeah, he called himself the Napoleon of the West.
Yep.
Also,
honestly, he has some truth to it. unlike most people that use that moniker of Napoleon of something.
I don't know. I feel like Napoleon, if he saw this, he'd be like, I won more than that guy. That's
Yeah, but what happened to you eventually, Napoleon?
Yeah, he eventually lost. That's true. Another fun thing about Santa Anna is at some point in his life between these wars, he's fighting against the French and he loses a leg. And he actually
I know where you're going.
He gets it preserved and he parades it around, but he gets a fake leg. And during the Mexican-American War, some American troops capture his leg. They capture his fake leg, and it's in like a state history museum. Is it Indiana? Is it Illinois? It's one of those
No, Illinois. It's Illinois. I know this because I went down a rabbit hole one day and was like, why the fuck?
Yeah.
How?
So everybody can go visit Illinois. And why would you visit Illinois? To see Santa Anna's fake leg. Like, that's why you would go to Illinois.
That's better than most reasons. So.
It would be the top of my list of fun things to do in Illinois.
And I might add, one of the things about the Mexican-American War is that it is really, truly a strategic stomping grounds for future Civil War generals. So it's an important thing to note is your people such as Grant, Stonewall Jackson, Robert E. Lee. This is going to be like where they first kind of get action. Your West Point graduates. So this is an important aside because this is an opportunity for some of these people to get action and kind of see war. And I would argue that if it weren't for this, I'm not quite sure the Civil War would have been as long.
I don't know, because
I don't know, just without the strategic experience.
I feel like the difference is, though, having two guys who are really experienced fighting each other, it's a long war. If you have two guys who are really inexperienced fighting each other, it can still be a long war. You know, it's if one side knows what they're doing and the other side doesn't, that's when you might get a shorter war. So, but it definitely was a stomping ground, a training ground. Grant served under Zachary Taylor, and then a General Winfield Scott, who also has a fun nickname, both Busted Feathers.
Oh, funny fact, my Nana's grandpa's name is Winfield Scott.
What?
No, my Nana.
That's fantastic.
Grandfather, we found out because we could only figure out it was abbreviated WS, and I was like, what are we gonna bet? Knowing the time period that it was Winfield Scott. Yep, sure enough.
So,
God damn it.
So the United States stomps Mexico in this war, and as a result of it, we don't just say, okay, great, we got Texas, we got the border we want. We take the entire American Southwest. We take California, New Mexico, Colorado, Arizona, all of it. We take 55% of Mexico.
You mean we can't stop expanding?
We can't. It's manifest destiny. We can't. Don't blame us. It's destiny. It was gonna happen.
We're like Miley fucking Cyrus, man. We can't stop. We won't stop.
And taking all that land is gonna cause a lot of problems.
Kenny, where do we find you?
You can find me on APH Podcast. I think that's what my Twitter handle is. Or just search Abridged Presidential Histories on any, on Google, on any podcast platform. I'm on pretty much all of them. Abridged Presidential Histories.
It is APH. I had to fact check him there.
Oh my god, that was brilliant.
You guys get that self-awareness right there?
That was amazing.
Sure, yeah, that's it. That's totally where you find me. Do you have anything personal, websites, anything like that to plug?
All I got's the Twitter account and then the podcast out there to listen to. So, yeah.
Perfect. And you guys, you specifically, not you guys. I'm used to multiple people. You specifically, all platforms, right?
Pretty much. If you look for me on a platform and I'm not there, hit me up on Twitter and tell me.
Yeah, because he has Buzzsprout, man.
And my Twitter is APH Podcast.
Yes, which has been confirmed and fact-checked to be his actual Twitter.
Yeah.
Confirmed. Confirmed by this. We fact-checked it. That's where you find him. That's where you follow him. It's an absolutely great podcast, folks. I suggest you go and listen for these same kind of juicy tidbits for presidential histories that you find here, listening which is awesome. Of course, he's not probably going to be literally talking about shoveling shit. But that is something special that he's done for us, and I appreciate a great deal. That being said, we're going to go ahead and read out. Kara, where do people find you?
People find me at Twitter, Kara DiDemizio. So simply my first name and last name. And my Instagram is Kara.DiDemizio. But for real, I don't use that as often. So seriously, follow me on Twitter. That's your best way to find me and get a hold of me. And then also I do run Time Travel Talks, which I'm going to quickly plug, but it's a community I've been trying to build. And we're actually in the process of getting serious with several projects we have down the pipeline. So please follow that at Time Travel Talks on Twitter and Instagram. We have some exciting stuff happening, and Kenny actually has done a contribution for it that we do envision being one of the very first things we're going to share. So I'm pretty damn hyped about that. And that was a great way for me to plug because right here.
Yay!
So excellent. And then Bethany, Jessica, body count. Where can we find you?
Bethany, go ahead and tell us where to find you.
You can find me on Twitter, or actually you can find me on Instagram at Bethany Skelton 5, all lowercase. And then on Twitter, it is the same handle, but please capitalize on my BS initial. Otherwise, you'll tag somebody else. Jessica, over to you.
Well done. You can find and follow us at Body Count Pod on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. There you will find our link tree anywhere and everywhere you can listen to us. We are available on all broadcast, I don't know, what do you call them, platforms? Anywhere you listen to a fucking podcast, I don't know. That being said, you can follow me at Jessica B. Manor on Twitter and Instagram. Be aware, I'm not much of an Instagrammer, but you can find and follow me on Twitter. I will definitely interact with you there. That being said, we're going to go ahead and wrap this one up. Kenny's going to bring us a second part to this amazing little guest series that he's doing that I'm super into. I've been very excited, and it's going to continue to get exciting. That being said, we will check in with you guys later in the week, and thank you so much for listening. Goodbye.
Bye.